What if a 63-year-old man making pizza possessed the power to simply delete you from reality? When an arrogant 300-ship armada interrupted his silence, he didn't fight back. He revoked their right to have ever existed. Stay until the end to uncover the terrifying truth of absolute power. Have you ever stared into the mirror, completely exhausted to your marrow, and wished you possessed a literal button to erase the world? Not to kill, not to destroy, but simply to make the relentless, deafening noise of human demands cease to exist. We are constantly told that supreme power looks like a tyrant on a throne, a billionaire in a glass skyscraper, a conqueror stripping galaxies of their resources. We have been lied to. Supreme, terrifying power does not scream. It whispers. And if you truly understood what the highest frequency of dominance actually looks like, it would shatter everything you thought you knew about your own life. At the Wealth Ladder US6 warmly welcomes you to a journey that will dismantle your reality. If you find yourself yearning for the profound quiet we are about to explore, please subscribe to our channel. Your support gives us the vital motivation to continue uncovering these deeply hidden truths for you. Look around you at this drowning civilization. We are suffocating under a low-vibration avalanche of constant, meaningless demands. Your inbox is a graveyard of manufactured urgencies. We perform exhausting, hollow routines for institutions and people who could not care less about the actual architecture of our souls. You know this profound psychological saturation. You feel the crushing weight of having to constantly prove your right to breathe in a society that feeds on your exhaustion. Deep within the hidden corridors of your mind, you have fantasized about reclaiming the sanctity of your own internal space, silencing the arrogant and erasing the intrusive. Hold on to that desperate craving for silence, and let me introduce you to the man who actually holds the absolute cure. Do not picture a god draped in cosmic armor. Picture a 63-year-old man named Nicholas Gagliano. He is long divorced. He carries the heavy, quiet scars of a life previously wasted in the chaotic, soul-crushing frequencies of normal human existence that you and I endure daily. Nicholas belongs to what we might call the hidden remnant, those incredibly rare, evolved souls who looked at the illusion of an external empire and walked away, choosing instead the terrifying mastery of the internal sanctuary. His daily rituals do not involve galactic strategy or weapons of mass destruction. His activation codes are incredibly human, profoundly intimate. They are the meticulous, meditative brewing of a dark roast coffee in the morning quiet. They are the exact, loving alchemy of kneading dough for a homemade pizza. They are the chaotic yet immensely soothing crackle of vintage jazz vinyls echoing through empty metallic halls, accompanied by the slow, rhythmic, wheezing breaths of his only true companion in the universe, an ancient, arthritic basset hound named Sosio. Yet this gentle, aging man is the sole occupant and undisputed master of a monolithic vessel the size of a small moon, drifting silently through the cold cosmic ocean. Embedded within the cold steel of this ship is a mechanism known simply as the existence grid. Do not mistake this for a weapon. Weapons destroy matter. They are messy, emotional, and loud. The grid is an instrument of divine-level physics. It manipulates the very fabric of space and time. It does not kill. It simply dictates what is permitted to exist in reality and what is gently, permanently relegated to the absolute void. Herein lies the ultimate staggering paradox of the strongest being in the known universe. Nicholas holds the literal activation codes to reshape the galaxy, to bring arrogant emperors to their knees, and to shatter armadas with a single, fleeting thought. Yet he desires absolutely nothing but non-existence in the eyes of others. He refuses to rule. He refuses to be feared. He only wants to be completely, irrevocably forgotten. This paradox holds a brutal mirror to the profound exhaustion of our own times. It is the ultimate manifestation of the internal soul warring against the institutional machine. Nicholas proves that when you finally reach the highest possible frequency of true power, the only luxury worth having, the only treasure left in the cosmos, is absolute silence. To truly grasp the magnitude of this silence, we must first understand the deafening roar of the universe that inevitably sought to shatter it. You see, reality abhors a vacuum, and human ambition is the most insidious virus in the cosmos. The galaxy does not tolerate a god who refuses to act like one. Word of a monolithic vessel, drifting aimlessly through the forgotten sectors of the Outer Rim, eventually reached the sprawling intelligence networks of the Sovereign Coalition. This was a stellar empire built on the exact frequencies Nicholas despised: endless expansion, bureaucratic tyranny, and the perpetual, loud consumption of resources. They did not see an old man seeking refuge. They saw an unclaimed asset. They saw a superweapon that could solidify their dominance for a millennium. When they dispatched their supreme armada to intercept him, they were not sending diplomats. They sent a floating mechanical city of warships, a swarm of titanium and nuclear fire that blotted out the stars. I want you to imagine the sheer, agonizing intrusion of this moment. Picture Nicholas in his dimly lit galley. The dough for his pizza is resting under a damp towel. A 1959 recording of Miles Davis is playing, the trumpet notes hanging in the recycled air like golden dust. Sosio, the basset hound, is dreaming on a worn rug, his paws twitching. And then, the proximity alarms begin to hum. It is a low, invasive thrumming that reverberates through the deck plates, vibrating into the marrow of Nicholas's bones. The external monitors flare to life, blinding the tranquil darkness of the control room with the harsh, aggressive light of 10,000 hostile engine flares. This is the universal tragedy of the introvert, scaled up to cosmic proportions. No matter how far you run, the demanding, screaming world will eventually batter down your door, demanding your participation in its endless, exhausting dramas. The Coalition Admiral, broadcasting on all frequencies, demanded immediate surrender, quoting universal law, military doctrine, and the inevitable triumph of their civilization. Their transmission was a torrential downpour of arrogance. They threatened to vaporize the ship's outer hull if Nicholas did not immediately yield the activation codes to the existence grid. Sitting in the dim light, Nicholas did not feel a surge of adrenaline or the righteous fury of a cornered warrior. What I see in his eyes, what I feel in the very architecture of this moment, is simply a profound, suffocating weariness. It was the deep, spiritual sigh of a man who realized that even at the edge of the known universe, the agonizing stupidity of ambition could still find a way to interrupt his morning routine. Yet, even as their targeting lasers painted the hull of his monolithic refuge in a grid of hostile red light, Nicholas's first instinct was not anger, but a profound, almost tragic pity. He understood something that the Admiral, sitting in his glittering, hyper-militarized command center, could not possibly comprehend. When you hold the power to unmake reality, the act of using it is not a victory. It is a chore. It is an administrative task of the highest, most depressing order. Nicholas slowly wiped the flour from his hands, stepped over the sleeping form of his dog, and activated a single narrow-band audio channel. He did not turn on his visual feed. He did not want them to see an emperor. He wanted them to hear the raw, unvarnished exhaustion in his voice. His message was not a threat, but a plea. He spoke softly, his voice gravelly from days of disuse. He told them they were making a mistake, not in tactics, but in philosophy. He explained, with the patience of a father speaking to a toddler holding a loaded gun, that he had no wealth to plunder, no political capital to exploit, and absolutely no desire to engage in their galactic theater. "Please," he whispered into the cosmic void, the static of the transmission amplifying the heavy sorrow in his throat. "Just turn your ships around. Pretend you found nothing but a dead asteroid. I am perfectly happy here. If you cross the threshold of my proximity perimeter, you will not die. You will simply never have been." This is where the paradox of power reaches its most agonizing apex. The coalition fleet heard his words, but their culturally conditioned arrogance filtered it as weakness. They had been bred in a society where power must be loud, aggressive, and visually overwhelming to be real. A man pleading for solitude while commanding a moon-sized dreadnought did not compute in their algorithmic conqueror minds. The admiral laughed, a sharp metallic sound that cut through Nicholas's sanctuary like shattered glass. He ordered the vanguard dreadnoughts to charge their primary cannons, signaling the final countdown to boarding. Nicholas listened to the hum of their weapons charging. He closed his eyes. The tragedy was not that he was about to be destroyed, but that he was being forced to clean up the universe's mess yet again. He was being dragged back into the crushing gravity of consequence by the sheer, unyielding density of other people's egos. It was in that precise moment of supreme galactic hubris that the universe learned the terrifying difference between a conqueror's wrath and an old man's exhaustion. Nicholas opened his eyes, walking slowly toward the central console. The existence grid did not have a massive glowing red button or require a dramatic turning of dual keys. It was a fluid biometric interface that responded to intention, to the exact neurochemical signature of absolute resolve. He placed his calloused hand flat against the cool, dark glass of the terminal. He didn't lock coordinates. He didn't calculate trajectory. He simply visualized the space the coalition fleet occupied and conceptually categorized it as empty. What happened next is the most beautiful, horrifying phenomenon I have ever come to understand. There was no explosion. There was no blinding flash of apocalyptic light, no shockwave rippling through the dark matter, no dramatic symphony of twisting metal and screaming bulkheads. Explosions are biological, chaotic, and messy. The existence grid deals in the cold, mathematical certainty of ontology. It simply rewrote the fundamental equations of that specific pocket of space. In total, chilling silence, the coalition armada, comprising over 300 warships, hundreds of thousands of souls, and enough firepower to crack a planet in half, just stopped being. They faded like breath on a cold window pane. 1 second, the tactical monitors were blindingly bright with hostile signatures, and the next, there was only the deep, undisturbed blackness of the cosmos. No debris fields were left behind to tell the tale. No distress beacons echoed in the dark. The energy they possessed wasn't destroyed. It was smoothly redistributed back into the background radiation of the universe, as if the cosmos was simply taking back a borrowed cup of sugar. Imagine witnessing that. Imagine the absolute crushing horror of realizing that the ultimate weapon does not grant you the dignity of a warrior's death. It strips you of your very right to have existed at all. The Admiral, his glittering medals, his sprawling ambition, his childhood memories, his empire's grand plans, all of it was deleted with the same casual, indifferent flick of a wrist one might use to brush a speck of dust off a table. Nicholas stood at the console, watching the perfect, pristine darkness return to his screens. He did not smile. There was no triumphant swell of music in his mind, no rush of adrenaline validating his supremacy. His shoulders slumped a fraction of an inch lower. The erasure was flawless, but it was still an interaction, still an expenditure of energy he had desperately wished to avoid. He stood there in the profound, terrible quiet he had just manufactured, bearing the immense, solitary weight of playing God just to secure the right to be left alone. When the cosmic canvas was finally wiped clean, leaving nothing but the pristine blackness of deep space, the absolute silence returned, heavier and more exquisite than before. Nicholas pulled his hand away from the cool glass of the terminal. The proximity alarms, having nothing left in reality to detect, smoothly spun down into a gentle, dormant hum. The crisis had passed, not with a bang, but with an absolute, undeniable subtraction. He turned away from the monitors, the faint glow of the tactical screens casting long, solitary shadows across the metal floor. He walked slowly back to the galley. The trumpet on the vinyl record was still weeping its golden notes, uninterrupted and indifferent to the fact that an entire armada had just been wiped from the annals of time. Sosio was still asleep, his breathing a steady, comforting rhythm against the cold, immense backdrop of the ship. Nicholas approached the counter, pulled back the damp towel, and tested the elasticity of the pizza dough with a flour-dusted finger. It was perfect. This is where I need you to pause and truly absorb the depth of this reality. We spend our entire lives chasing the loud, frantic validations of a society that will eventually forget us. We exhaust ourselves trying to conquer our own little corners of the world, thinking that if we just acquire enough money, enough status, or enough influence, we will finally find peace. But Nicholas Gagliano holds the universe in the palm of his hand, and he uses it solely to protect the sanctity of his kitchen. True power is not the ability to force the world to look at you. It is the absolute, unassailable freedom to stop looking at the world. It is the sovereignty of the internal sanctuary, the ability to say no to the crushing demands of the external machine and make that no a permanent reality. As Nicholas slides his humble dinner into the oven, surrounded by millions of miles of empty, silent space, he becomes the most triumphant figure I can possibly imagine. He has won the only war that actually matters, the war for his own peace. And as you sit there, surrounded by the pinging of notifications, the demands of your job, and the relentless noise of this drowning civilization, I ask you to remember Nicholas. Remember that the ultimate luxury is not an empire. It is the quiet. It is the profound, beautiful emptiness of a space where no one expects anything from you ever again. Thank you for walking through this dark, quiet corridor with me. May you find the strength to carve out your own sanctuary, and may your own existence grid protect the peace you so deeply deserve. The story of Nicholas Gagliano serves as a breathtaking meditation on the true nature of power and the exhausting reality of human ambition. In a universe obsessed with endless expansion, loud conquests, and the relentless accumulation of wealth, Nicholas represents the ultimate paradox, a being who possesses the absolute power to unmake reality, yet desires only to protect his simple, quiet existence. When the Sovereign Coalition's armada arrives, blinded by their own ego and institutional arrogance, they mistake his polite plea for solitude as a symptom of weakness. They cannot comprehend that supreme authority does not need to be loud, aggressive, or violent to be real. By quietly erasing an entire fleet from existence merely to protect the tranquility of his kitchen, Nicholas demonstrates that the highest form of dominance is not control over others, but the absolute preservation of one's own internal peace. The narrative masterfully strips away the glorification of conflict, revealing the tragedy of an introvert constantly forced to interact with a demanding, noisy world. Ultimately, Nicholas's story reminds us that true freedom isn't found in ruling a galaxy or commanding the attention of millions. It is found in the unassailable right to simply be left alone, enjoying a quiet moment, a sleeping dog, and a perfectly kneaded pizza dough while the rest of the universe spins in its own chaotic, meaningless noise. The ultimate measure of success is not the accumulation of external validation, wealth, or power over others, but the ability to cultivate and protect your own peace of mind. Society constantly conditions us to believe that we must fight for visibility and dominance, but true strength lies in the sovereignty of your internal sanctuary and the firm boundaries you establish against the world's endless demands. You do not need a cosmic superweapon to carve out your own sanctuary. Start by fiercely auditing the noise in your daily life. Turn off unnecessary digital notifications, decline obligations that drain your mental energy, and stop engaging in pointless arguments that only serve to inflate other people's egos. Create a dedicated time and physical space in your routine, whether it is 15 minutes of morning coffee, a quiet evening walk, or a closed-door reading hour, where the demands of the world are strictly forbidden from entering. Protect this time with absolute resolve. Learn the incredible quiet power of the word no. If you could create just one absolute quiet zone, or uninterrupted activity in your daily routine where the world is never allowed to bother you, what would it be? Please drop a comment below and share your thoughts so we can all get inspired by each other's ideas. If you enjoyed this perspective and want to explore more deep, thought-provoking content, please hit the subscribe button to support the channel. Your support gives us the motivation to keep producing great videos for you.